Hello and welcome to Politically Incorrect Knitters. My name is Anne Pinkava, joined as always by the lovely Deplorable Knitter.
Hi everybody, thanks for joining us today.
And this week's video is sponsored by Chicken Lady Fiber Arts. You can use our code PIK Deplorables20 for 20% off your order. She has new yarn in this week. The update should be in by the time this video is, so hopefully it's not sold out. But it is self-striping yarn for Christmas.
Yep, she had a picture of it up on Instagram. I think it was called Peppermint Stick. It was red and green and white with speckles on it. It was very pretty, but all of her yarns are, so that's not a surprise.
Yeah, and we've also talked before about her Grand Valley yarn, about how it's made in America and milled next to her with sheep that are, within 20 miles of her in Colorado. But you may not know that she has other made in America yarns that she has fingering, DK, and worsted bases that are all grown, processed, and then dyed by her in America.
Yep. Not they weren't grown processed by her, but they are certainly dyed by her in America.
Right. Right, get the Oxford commas in there.
And make sure you use the code PIK Deplorables20, and you can use that more than one time. So if something strikes your fancy this update, don't worry, you can use it again. So check her out. So do you have any knitting to talk about today, Anne?
I do. First off, with our hat for sailors knit along, gotta be getting that in the mail because the cutoff date, I believe, is November the 12th.
November 12th, which is next Friday. So get on it.
Right. So with that, I knit the one hat that I showed before, but I had just a heck of a time this week. Like, I was trying to get a hat together. I was like, oh, this, oh, that, and I couldn't fix on anything. And I give up, which is not very good, but I did. So I pulled some hats from Stash 2. Like I think I said before that I have an Etsy shop where I have some pre-made hats and patterns, if anyone's interested. And they're also patterns around Lovecrafts too. But so I just pulled a couple of hats that I had around, but also that have been on Etsy, and even with whatever listing fees, that the listing fees are much lower than the selling fees. So even with that, they're probably, in the red already. They've been hanging out so long. So that I have, okay, so the hat that you saw me make before, the kind of Newt Scamander looking thing. Then I have this guy, which actually spun this, but I'm not, it's kind of waffle and nice, but also falls under the all wool brief because it's all merino. This guy, which is actually yarn that my brother sent me from Japan. And I didn't block it even after all this time. Look at that. But yeah, it's little anchors going up and down.
Oh, that's really cute. That'll be fitting for somebody on the carrier, won't it?
Exactly. Very on brief that way. So pulling, oops, I have a little thing. But yeah, pulling that guy out. And this, which is kind of like a 1940s sweater pattern. Not super sure how that will be received, but
I think it's cool. I've seen a lot of people on the Facebook group and things, and everybody has a different style and a different taste, and it's great. There's so many people on the ships that there's bound to be somebody who's going to be like, oh, I love 1940s sweaters, I need that hat. So it's not going to be an issue, I don't think.
Yeah, very traditional. But yeah, and then I have this guy, which is a little busy, but thistles, which is cool. Black and white. So, yeah. And then this, which I made and never put out because I was a little afraid of it being, associated with the Women's March hats, but also, maybe.
So it kind of looks like cat ears when you wear it.
Yeah, a bit. But again, maybe received well or not.
Like I said, all kinds of people. So I
All
think
kinds of people. So anyways, so yeah, that's my plan because I'm not I'm not very good with staying on brief and being timely. But yeah, other than that, for knitting, I completed another big chunky Christmas stocking.
nice.
And yeah, worked a bit on my shawl. So yeah, what have you been knitting or crocheting as I see?
Well, I'll just talk about that in a second. So first off, let me move my items over here. Oh, let's see. Very first off, actually, I ordered from Knitty McPurley the other day. She was discontinuing her worsted weight yarn base. And so I got these 3 skeins. These 2 are the same. They're called Date Night. And then this guy in the middle is called Victoria. And it's screaming color work to me because the Date Night's got some orange and some like pinks in there that happen to pretty much match this.
Mm-hmm.
They're maybe a shade off, but they complement each other. So I had been thinking I was going to give it to my mom for Christmas, but then I got them in my hands, and then maybe they're not going to go to her for Christmas. And even though I canceled my knit crate, they have been so far behind in fulfilling orders that I still got some. So I got 2 skeins of this orange this week. I don't really like the color orange, but it's pretty. It's got little tweed nub things in there, and it's cute. So got that. That's what's happening with the yarn. And then yesterday I went to my P.O. box, and there is a lovely lady called Little Bunny who makes blankets. And she sent me one. She prays while she's making the blanket for the person who's going to get it. And so this one has been prayed over specifically for me so that when I have my surgery, hopefully it'll be nice, quick healing. And that was a really fabulous surprise because as it's getting closer, I'm getting nervous, even though I'm trying to like not be, which I think is just normal. But yeah, so
That's very kind of her.
Yep, got that in the mail. And then I think I mentioned it, I don't remember, that one of next semester or whatever it's called in homeschool co-op, I'm going to be teaching an amigurumi class with another mother at the co-op who really likes to crochet. And so she's taken to hanging out with me in my knitting class and crocheting. And so we decided to do one together. And so we're going to do amigurumi. So I've started making, because I want to, it's hard planning ahead for these classes. You have to have the correct hooks. You have to have the right amount of yarn. You have to have the right amount of stuffing. So I've started making the projects, and I weigh them when they're all in pieces, and then I weigh them when they're stuffed, so that I have an idea of how much we're going to need, be able to do some math and plan ahead and have plenty for each student. So this Jellyfish, it's a free pattern from Not Bad Amy. So there's that. Yeah, so this sea turtle is, this is probably going to be like the last project we work on, because it's not just amigurumi, it's, I can't think of what these flowers are called, African blossoms or something. It's a certain kind of crocheted flower you do.
Right, and it's more like a granny square, except not, it's round.
It is, but so because of that, there's some different counting and things. So this will probably be once they're a little bit more advanced.
That is absolutely adorable.
Like for real. And I'm making all of mine. I got a super saver skein of yarn, and I'm just using the same skein to make them all. So even though, you know, and then I'm working on a fish right now, and it's this. It hasn't turned into anything yet, but so that's happening, and I've been having fun with these. I just I don't know. I usually, when I'm making something like this, it's because I'm going to sell it in a store or something. So it's just kind of fun to just make them and not have the pressure of like having to have it be perfect. Like this guy, his head is too close to this fin, but it makes him look like he's swimming, I guess. Like, I don't know. So there's that. And then because that's not enough, I designed a pattern this week.
Which you've shown on Instagram, haven't you?
I have. And guys, this is your news brief, your flash that if you are not on my email list, you really should be. Because when I release new patterns, I tend to send out a code. It's not for a ton off, but if you want to buy the pattern, be on the mailing list. Save money, you know? Okay, so the new design is this Let's Go Brandon hat. And if you flip it over, it has the hashtag FJB on the back, which, you know, I tend to try not to be vulgar, but it is what it is. And I figure, you know, we're not really saying it. We're just telling people what we think about the whole deal. So
the voice of the people at every sporting event, some comedy clubs.
People are saying it. So I just figured it needed to be a hat pattern for those of us who knit. So yeah, that's coming out. It'll be out Saturday morning. So when you're watching this, it should be available. If you're on the newsletter, there should be a code for it. And if you would like to admire my beautiful, beautiful pom-pom, those are one of my beautiful Sweet Mountain Crafts pom-poms that she makes for me every time I beg her to. So there you go.
I think she just came out that she had more this week too. So
yeah,
not only by request.
Yes, she doesn't always have them there, but they are available right now. So check them out. So that's all my crafty stuff that's going on. And then I wanted to mention, so I talk a lot about my audiobooks that I listen to. I went through a couple month period where I wasn't really listening to any because I had gotten into a podcast. And so I binged like 300 and something episodes of this podcast. But now I'm done with that and I've gone back to my books, and I really like to listen to fiction. Crime thrillers are really my thing. I do like some fantasy. But I've got to say lately, I have been disappointed with the authors I've been listening to. They, Michael Connolly, who is a really great author, he's got, his character Walsh is they made it into a series on Amazon Prime. I mean, like, he's a prolific writer. I love his stuff. I love mysteries because I'm always surprised. I am not the person that figures them out. So I'm always like, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming. And he does it really well. But his newest book that came out, I got it. I was really excited that he had a new one out. And it spent its whole time bashing Trump. And then I was listening to another author that I really enjoy. And the first hour was about like pronouns and a transgender character. And I don't care if they have a transgender character, but the whole thing was like very over the top, like every liberal talking point you've heard. And I just couldn't get behind it. So I wanted to share with you guys a book that I have read recently that actually I've been speaking with the author who promotes the book as being non-woke. Like, so the author is Cody Schlegel, and the book is called Odyssey Tale. And I liked it a lot because it took all of these characters that you know from fairy tales and different retellings that you've seen and heard, and it puts them in a situation that you wouldn't exactly expect. Like, there's a character in there named Peter who has a group of lost boys, but they're more like vigilante, maybe not vigilante, pirates for hire kind of thing, as opposed
Like
to
privateers.
associate them with. Thank you. Yes.
There you go.
Yes. More along that marauder. I don't know. There's some, yeah, privateer.
Mhm.
So, but it was a lot of fun because there were characters that you knew and loved that were doing things you did not expect them to. But there is not a woke agenda. This author actually found our podcast because of my appearance on Unsafe Spaces. So
Great.
pretty cool. It's a great, if you have somebody who loves to read, it's a great gift. And Anne and I are going to be doing a giveaway of one of the books. We'll have more information in next episode, but just wanted to tell you guys that, you know, there are still people out there who haven't fallen to the agenda. You don't have to sit there and cringe through the Trump bashing and the proper pronouns. And if you want to like
just
really
write a story for a story's sake,
fall into a fantasy, this is a good book. So Odyssey Tale by Cody Schlegel. I'll put the link in the profile so you guys can check it out if that's something that you're interested in. And we're going to do a giveaway. So with that note, we're going to go to news, which sucks.
Woo-hoo.
Actually, it doesn't all suck this week, so that's also a bonus.
Actually, we have some good news this week, which is remarkable.
Right?
Well, the biggest good news thing is, of course, Glenn Youngkin winning the governorship in Virginia. So
Yep.
That's very exciting. And okay, even the Brits are excited about that one. And it's difficult because when you look at other countries' politics, you don't necessarily, if someone says something political is happening in Greece, well, I don't, it's not Republican, Democrat, or whatever the parties are in Greece. It's just Greece.
Right.
To pull a country out of the hat. But for the Brits to be looking over at America and going like, wow, a Republican won the governor's race. That's kind of a big deal. And especially they, talking about Winsome Sears, who's the lieutenant governor, her acceptance speech has been shared around quite a bit. And it was just an excellent speech. But yeah, it was just interesting to me how much the sort of British alternate media latched onto that. That she, perhaps part of it was that, she was a Commonwealth citizen coming from Jamaica and not having an American citizenship until she joined the Marines. And then also mentioning for the good of the Commonwealth, that the Commonwealth of Virginia, that's what they call themselves. So it's moving from one Commonwealth to another, but, very appreciative and very enthusiastic about America.
Oh, you mean she doesn't hate the country like half of the other people that are in office?
No. And and in her speech, she says how her father came to America from Jamaica at the height of the civil rights movement and debate. And, that she asked him, wasn't it, horrible for you coming here? And he's like, no, America was the land of opportunity. Had $1.50 in his pocket and worked whatever job he could and was successful enough to bring his family to America. So, but yeah, her speech is really, really excellent and inspiring. I'd encourage you all to check it out.
Cool. And so that right there was a referendum on McAuliffe. Is that his name?
No, it was,
but he's also the guy who said that parents have no place in the education system and we have no right to know what our children are learning or influence it. And I guess that when that's your message, the American people are going to tell you what they feel about it.
Right. But I believe, and not to contradict, but that was the guy who was running against Northam. It was Northam who was previously governor of Virginia, that he wasn't running again. And that was the guy who was in blackface and also was in favor of, quote, post-birth abortions. Charming fellow.
So yes, he is not the blackface guy, you are correct, but right. He is the guy who said that parents have no right to know anything about education.
Yeah, it
And
was like a cheer line in the debate that, like, yeah, parents don't have a right to know what their kids know in schools. It's like, wait, what?
and parents said, hey, guess what?
We do.
Although, if you read anything that comes out of mainstream media, they are all white supremacists. And the people that did it are you and me, Ann. White women were the worst ones. Never mind that the lieutenant governor is a black woman, and never mind that the new state attorney general is a Hispanic man. But
right, and never mind all of the videos from the Virginia school board meetings. I believe, well, Virginia was also the state in which that there was, quote, boy in a skirt who raped two separate girls at school. And there was an Iranian man who got up and he mentioned it in his speech. And he was very upset about all of this. I suppose you can mark him down as a white supremacist also. So
yeah, I think that there's always going to be the people that buy into this, like, characterization that they put on Republicans and conservatives, but I think that a lot of people are starting to open their eyes. One of my very, very good friends is an African immigrant, and I was talking to the kids in the car the other day, and I said, people think I don't like other people that have brown or black skin, and they go, but they don't know that Mrs. Kennel is your best friend. You know what I mean? I think that if you're white and you don't agree with the Democrats, you're racist, is starting to kind of wear thin. So
but yeah, it's kind of it's a thing that only works if it's like, oh, well, all of Virginia is just filled with evil white women. Which is like, you're not really seeing the demographics of Virginia very much. But also that it only works if you read the headlines and you don't know anybody and you don't know anyone involved and you haven't seen the videos of these angry parents, and somebody says, this is what happens in 2 sentences, and you say, sure, and move on, and no more thought is given to it.
Right. Yep. So that happened. And then what about New Jersey?
Well, New Jersey, okay, so it looks like some kind of shady things are happening in New Jersey, but at the same time, Chris Christie is such a contemptible, greasy man. I'm also, on the other hand, it's like, well, I certainly don't want a Democrat in charge of New Jersey, but frankly, what has this guy done for us lately? This is the guy who like kisses up to Trump and then throws him under the bus the next time. And he just, I don't know, there's something very icky about him.
Before Trump was in office, I liked him, but it seemed like when things didn't go his way, when Trump wasn't elected and things, he got to be more political. Like, he used to be like a guy who seemed like a regular guy, and then he turned into like one of those jerks that you don't really want anything to do with.
Yeah, he's
so
petty. But yeah, not at all someone not a good pick for the team, basically. It's like, I don't want to associate with this dude. So there does seem to be an upcoming legal battle because, it went from too close to call to, for the Democrat side. But I mean, definitely something to watch in future days, but not enough that I kind of know about it now to speak much of.
Yeah. And speaking of too close to call, there is a race here in New York. It's I don't know if he's Congress or Senate or what. He might be state assembly. I'm not entirely sure, but it's the Democrat is the incumbent, and a former police chief is running against him as the Republican, and the race is super close, and they're going to count absentee ballots on the 15th. And I'm like, but the 15th is like 2 weeks after the election. Like, that's weird.
If absentee ballots count, they count on election day.
And so I said to my husband, I'm like, that seems shady. He goes, well, how do you think they're going to manufacture the votes they need if they don't have a couple of days to do it?
Right. And also 2 weeks come on, guys. Like, get it together. Get in gear. It takes you this long. I remember the days where there was quote camera equipment and quote coolers, and you could get this done mostly in one night.
Yeah, the only election before this past nonsense that ever I remember lasting very long had to do with the hanging chads.
Mhm.
I mean, you were young when that happened, right?
Yeah.
I think I was I was in high school. I think I was like a junior or senior. So I remember that, like, that was one of my first really vivid election memory things, because I couldn't vote in that one, but I was close to being able to. So,
Right.
but yeah, before that, I didn't care. I didn't notice. And Anne was what, 8, and you were probably watching it because you're Anne.
Well, I don't remember. I mean, I vaguely remember it happening. I don't know much. I remember mom saying later, like right now with the different protests, and then previously we had the Tea Party movement, and just talking about with the hanging chads, it was just kind of sheepish looking men in khaki pants and polo shirts holding signs saying, Al Gore, get out of Dick Cheney's house. But I mean, was a different time.
It sure was.
But
okay, well, that's
anyways,
happening.
But with that though, I kind of wanted to mention, because there's this sort of, I don't know, there's this sort of surge of, well, this proves that the Republican Party can win without Trump, and that Trump is the losing deal here. And Matt Walsh in particular, who can be a bit obnoxious, to be honest.
Do I know who he is?
Matt
Walsh?
I think he's someone with the Daily Caller.
Okay.
Anyways, he's been kind of a little bit on the shock jock end of the internet for a while.
Okay.
So, that sort of thing. But he's, I don't know, that the idea that, and different people are saying that, oh, well, like the young Miss McCain is saying this. I'm like, yes, because political strategy. Your family is winners when it comes. But yeah, that like, oh, well, that the reason that Youngkin did so well was because, he wasn't Trump, and that that Trumpism wins as long as it's not Trump, because Trump is mean and he offends people. Okay. As I'm sure you're about to say, that Trump endorsed Youngkin, and that was a big push. And
yeah, and what people forget is that most of us are not offended by mean tweets. Mm-hmm. I would rather have somebody mean and be able to pay for gas any day of the week.
Right.
I don't need him to be my friend. That's not his job.
Yes, and I mean, and
and I'd also prefer a president who goes to the Vatican and comes out of it in the same suit he went in.
Yes. I also prefer a president that when he is in any group of world leaders, rules it and doesn't shuffle behind like somebody's forgotten creepy uncle.
Well, he is somebody's forgotten creepy uncle. That's part of the problem.
Ooh.
And I'd also like somebody who can form a coherent sentence. I don't think that's actually that much to ask for. I have a 6-year-old that can speak more clearly and concisely than our current president can. So
that's true.
That's all I know, girl.
I would also like somebody who would be very upset and turn things around if, for example, we left several $billion of military equipment behind, that many of which is that the bases that we left in a country like Afghanistan is now under Chinese control.
Well, and now you're just spewing crazy talk.
Oh, wow. Now I'm just getting into it.
Now it's like asking Santa for a dragon. Come on.
I mean, seriously. Oh, but wait, I have a third listing, Santa, that I would also like someone who would be firm and negotiable in different world conflicts, such as what is still ongoing with England and France in their shipping disputes. While that's not necessarily America's business, I'm betting that a certain president whose last name starts with T would have a strong opinion in the matter and might come to more concise decisions.
And enough with the crazy talk. You're starting to sound like the current president. Come on. Come on, man.
Come on, man. No, but talking about the current president, but the thing that he said that, you know, well, we'd all much rather, and it was, again, this incoherent babble, and he was at the COP26 thing, and it was like, what is he trying to say? And it went on for like a minute, and none of the sentences matched with the other ones. And he's like, well, we'd all much rather have this Thanksgiving than last Thanksgiving, even with all the rising prices. And I'm like, no.
Not true. Not
even a
true.
little. Now,
Dude.
I remember last Thanksgiving was a little bit rough because, after all, we were all concerned about what happened, say, November 5th. But
yeah, there was that. But no, I don't know what this guy is smoking, but I need some, because anybody who watches us faithfully knows that last week our episode came out on Friday, because Saturday morning the husband and I had to rent a truck. We were getting some landscaping stone. We had a thing we had to do. When we went by the gas station with our truck at 6 o'clock in the morning, gas was $3.19. When we went to fill the truck up after we had done our errands, it was $3.49. I don't know what he's smoking, but this is not what people want. My husband just kept saying, it went up 30 cents. I can't believe it went up 30 cents in 12 hours. But I would like to be able to afford things. I was pissed off about the election, but I was happy that I could buy a turkey if I felt like it. And Christmas presents, those are always fun to have too. I enjoy buying those for my family.
Coincidentally, the feeling that anyone in our military gave a darn about Chinese space nukes, the luxuries of life.
Oh, you don't think anybody cares anymore?
I don't know. If people cared, they might resign in dishonor when they do poorly. That's a certain level of give a darn that we simply don't have. Hey, anyway, speaking of failure, I don't know if you've heard of the USS, I'm going to get this wrong because it's French, Bonhomme Richard.
Nope.
Okay, so this happened October 20th. So this is an aircraft carrier, large multi-billion naval vessel. So a sailor committed arson on the ship because he was upset that a lady sailor didn't like him. Okay.
That's okay.
No. That's not the story, because the story is, even though they had several admirals on the ship, that they did not have the organizational capabilities to put out the fire, that the entire ship went up.
Okay. Why haven't I heard the story?
Because ain't no one talking about this story. But yeah, that they called, I forget if it was in San Francisco or San Diego, that they called in the local fire department to help them, but it was too late. Because that's how capable we currently are, and that sucks. Yeah, all of that to say that, under certain leadership, these things would have been unacceptable and looked into.
Under different leadership, things may not be so dire. Although, could the whole thing with the ship really have degraded in 10 months that badly? Or do you think that they just didn't know what the hell to do with a fire anyway?
I don't know. If they were talking about maintenance and other things that, look, on board ship, even the most traditional ship, sailing boats, everything, even, every ship I've ever heard about in fiction, which is not the best way to do it. But if even fiction, they're saying, no, fire is our biggest concern, then I would think that there'd be some sort of basic, plan, fire safety, buildings, that may not just be a 10-month issue, that we have deeper problems in our military and have for a while. Because after all, General Milley is not a new invention.
Yeah. Well, now that we have that trans admiral, though, we're all set, right?
Yeah. And it's not weird at all that someone who has not been in a military role before has a 4-star admiralty just given out of nowhere, and also is in control of 6,000 people, but with that rank could command other forces, or also played high school football with General Milley.
I feel like you are just exceptionally cynical.
That's true.
I think that you need to take it down a notch and be kinder to your fellow persons on Earth.
Speaking of horrible mismanagement, also in New York City, because of the vaccine mandate, they have 20% of their people are placed on leave for not being vaccinated for the sanitation department of New York City. So trash is piling on the streets. You might be saying what's new, but just again, piles and piles, and people are throwing the trash over the fence of de Blasio's mansion, which is beautiful.
As they should be. They absolutely should be. Why do sanitation workers need to be vaccinated? I mean, they're around their coworkers, but it's not a job like a hospital where, well, I know why they have to be vaccinated, because people are following the ridiculous thing that Biden said. But in thinking with our brains, it's not like they're coming into contact with a whole bunch of people. It's not like, I mean, I wave at my trash people when they go by from my house or my front porch or wherever I may be. It's not like I'm up on them talking to them in their face, like, you know what I mean? I
mean, I appreciate you, but you have things to do. Bye.
Yeah. But about the vaccine mandate, I heard, I wish I had written it down, but I'm not Anne, so I didn't. I read today that Illinois might be putting a halt on the hospital worker mandate exemption thing. So that's going on. There's a few places that are starting to push back.
Well, and you were saying a little bit before about the myocarditis.
Oh yeah. So I read, and once again, I don't have where I saw it, but I was reading and I saw that people who get myocarditis, 66% of them only live 5 years after they are diagnosed with it. And so the fact that everybody's being like, oh yeah, no big deal, it makes me think something's fishy. It really does. And especially now that they're mandating it for kids 5 to 11, that's been passed. So there's that.
Right. And just the spike of myocarditis in young people right now is awful. And it's like, oh, well, it's a rare symptom. Like, how rare
how I don't want anything to happen to anybody's kids, but I feel like they should know what they're putting their kids in danger of. Like, yeah, I just can't imagine, like I said last week, I can't imagine putting my children in a position where their quality of life, their ability to do things is affected because I was all like, yeah, let's give them something experimental. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I had coffee with one of my good friends yesterday, and we were talking, and I said, oh, well, I'll email you the letter that you have to send to the school district when you take your kids out, because she's planning ahead to when they mandate vaccines. But I just don't understand. My husband has to have a vaccine to keep his job. He is an official work from home employee. He does not go into the office. They're on the telephone. That's as close as they get. But he has to be vaccinated.
Yeah, it's nonsense and it's logicless, and you just have to accept that the logic doesn't work in order for.
Yeah, I have trouble with that. It makes me really quite angry.
Oh, and in COVID world, slight correction from last week's video when we talked about the NHS having do not resuscitate orders on people with learning disabilities, that a lady did comment and say that learning disabilities in England is slightly different from America, that it means that basically you have an IQ of under 70, and normally it's, you know, someone with severe disabilities. And this answer is still, holy crud, they're having do not resuscitate orders.
Yeah,
on
I don't care. I don't
Yeah.
care what your IQ is. That's not acceptable.
It's like, whoa, still bad. But again,
Yeah.
clarification.
But yes, thank you for clarifying, because that it's still wrong, like Anne said, but I was really stuck on the, like, how do you determine what learning disabilities are bad enough to, so I, at least now I understand like how they've, still wrong.
Yeah.
Either way, doesn't matter.
Well, it's, and I can't quote numbers for this one to talk about much, but there was this weird program in Japan a while back where they were like, yeah, we're just going to sterilize all the weird kids. And it wasn't wide reaching, but I think about that a lot. I should, no, but they were, that
Who
it was like,
determines if you're the weird kid?
well, if you were like a juvenile delinquent, or if you were like ADHD, and it, yeah, again, it wasn't really wide reaching, but it was bad. And, you know, and again, this wasn't a massive amount, but it still happened. And we always need to be aware of horrible things happening all the time, because they do. And in the name of medical, and it's bad.
Yeah, no, for a long time, I never realized that like the thing that Hitler was doing was a thing. It was eugenics. It was everywhere. There were people here in the US that were totally into it. Like, it's good to know what's going on, because you can look at Hitler and be like, oh, he's terrible. But then here in the US, they were doing things like sterilizing people that they deemed unworthy. And so it happens, and it's good to know. Good to know what's up, people.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely. And
I feel like this is taken a very strange and sad turn.
I know. And for another strange and sad turn,
Great.
because, you know, there's been whispers around that, well, COVID is a great way to practice for that climate emergency. That there was the COP26 conference in Scotland, which we mentioned because Biden was a blithering idiot. Biden, and not only that, Biden had an 80-car motorcade, 80 cars, and he had that in Rome and in Scotland, and all of those cars were shipped in, all of them. So not the planes and the ships and everything else, but like, you can't rent a car, you can't. That's too much. Your age number 47, you know, can't like get a random black SUV from the dealership for the day. No, you have to ship it from America.
Yeah, that's messed up. And my favorite thing about that climate summit was the picture of like 400 private jets that were all parked there, because my carbon emissions are your problem, not your jets, but me and Anne and regular people. That we're the ones that are the issue.
It doesn't work. And also it's, you know, stuff like, you know, veganism, where it's like, oh, well, it's better for the planet if you don't eat meat or drink milk. And I live in the Great Plains, okay? So if there are no humans on the Great Plains and cows are the problem, well, then what's with all these hypothetical buffalo? Because there were millions of them. It's like, no, they're horrible, all of that. Like, sorry, all of these animals, and then, you know, if there's nobody to hunt them, they just die of disease all the time. That's great for environment. It's almost as if humans are on the planet for a reason. But no matter.
Go figure. Oh, and I also, another fabulous statistic I saw was that Al Gore, his carbon footprint is 96 times the regular person's. And he's one of the biggest people about it. So
yeah,
yeah.
They're just about, they're all like, oh, COVID's a great practice for climate. Yes, because the same people push the same ineffectual solutions that have no common sense applications.
Correct.
It's like, if we could, I sometimes think that, with, recycling things and with, waste not, want not, the sort of simple old-fashioned phrases, if we took somebody from like medieval anywhere and we're somehow able to transport them into the present and if they were to look at our garbage, like they would go nuts. Like they'd be like, whoa, you're throwing this away. We could do this, we could do that. This is like medieval England, who saved absolutely everything for specific uses.
Be careful what you say, because you'll get fact checked.
Whoa, that's true.
Because grandma didn't save tinfoil in the Great Depression. I know because Facebook told me.
Gosh. Well, Facebook is, after all, leading opinion. Anyways, it's ridiculous. But also, it's interesting. Just a little another English news note with the COP26 is that it was interesting because the Queen has been ill this week. That she was in hospital. She has not been walking her corgis, which is a pretty big sign. And she was supposed to speak at this conference, and she did this little Zoom thing about the importance of climate change, which is fairly concerning, I thought, because normally, the sort of position that the monarchy is in now is that they're just kind of a figurehead for the state. That America, we have presidents, and you love the president or you hate the president and you get a new one. But that in England, you have the prime minister who has, that you can love or hate his politics. And the Queen is somebody who is sort of representative of the country, doesn't have personal political beliefs, but you can say, hey, that's the Queen, we respect her, and everybody is pleased if she comes around and cuts a ribbon at your child's school. That there's some anti-monarchists, but in general, she's very kind and gracious and says something nice and does a charitable event and, does something for kids in, orphanages or hospitals. That it's very everybody in general agrees with what she does, that it's nothing offensive, nothing whatever. And her son Charles for years has been a rabid climate activist, and that he has suggested taxing people, for climate change, and he's with all of these different groups, which is very offensive and hypocritical of him, because the guy with, if you're the Queen and you have multiple palaces and everyone knows you have multiple palaces, well, then you're the Queen. But if you're saying how everyone else should reduce their lifestyle and you're still living high on the hog, yeah, that leaves a really bad taste in people's mouths. And the same with Harry and Meghan. But
I was just going to say, now at least we know where they're getting it from, because I don't know that much about the monarchy. So that makes more sense now.
Right. But he's been kind of not super held in check, but a bit held in check. So, and it's interesting that Will and Kate went to a climate thing, and everyone joked that they looked like Superman's parents. He was wearing like this velvet turtleneck, and she was wearing this silver kind of Grecian looking dress. And welcome to Krypton, my children. But
okay.
Anyways, but that they are going more climate activists, and and again, American, so whatever, but that is very concerning for the future of the monarchy. All of Europe, monarchy has gone mostly by the wayside, and to have the English monarchy being the last big thing, and Queen Lizzie has held on for this long, and then to have that totally destroyed by, climate activism, it's really terrible.
Right. Well, I think the big difference here is that Queen Elizabeth has lived through many different things. And you know, being part of the World War II and different things probably has shaped how she views things. Whereas someone spoiled like her son, who's always just known good shit, what do you expect? I mean, like, not to be a jerk, but if you don't have life experiences that are shaping you, then it's easy to be like Harry. I'm not going to be like, the monarchy sucks and we hate all of you people, and you know, American taxpayers pay for our security. Like, it's easy to just whatever.
But I mean, interestingly enough, I mean, Charles has always been a little, meh. I mean, now married to Camilla, who he was having an affair with while married to Diana. The British people, don't forget that. But also, I mean, Harry, though, I mean, to be slightly fair to Harry, who probably doesn't deserve it, but to give Harry half an ounce of credit, he was in the Marines and he was, you know, helicopter pilot, and he did do good things there. But it's like you could see before, back when everybody liked him, when he was a bro's bro, and then he met Meghan, and you know, and she has that man on a leash, which is what we would say to any other guy who suddenly got woke after he got married. And especially when they talk and when he speaks, her hand is on her knee, is on his knee, which I've said before is creepy.
Well, that's a whole different issue. I'm just saying that I can see where the Queen would want to not be divisive. She has lived through a long life, experienced many things, whereas the rest of us, yeah, we have things that we're dealing with and whatever, but it's not quite on the scale of like wars and famine and stuff she's had to deal with. And I think that that's obvious when people are, oh, cut your carbon footprint, but I'm going to live in 8,000 palaces. That's all.
Right.
I just think that there's a difference.
Right. And also with, you know, her husband, Prince Philip, his, that, you know, people are saying is, you know, that he was such a conservationist, and he too was for, you know, climate activism. His climate activism, you know, in large quotes, that when someone was proposing wind power, he was sitting there and he was like, you know, how much does it cost to put up? What, you know, what's the maintenance, and how much power do we get off this? Absolutely not.
Right.
That it's like, oh, because he wanted to preserve, you know, the beauty of England and the climate and not have pollution and all of these straightforward things that we would pretty much all agree with. But he was looking at it logically. What was the cost? What's the impact? And it's like, no, they're a blight on my landscape. They're expensive and they don't work.
And what do you do with those blades once they don't work anymore? They're ginormous.
Mm-hmm.
People don't think ahead. They have they
break down. And yeah. And also, have you ever seen pictures of a windmill fire?
No.
Fiberglass is very flammable. It's not good. It's like, oh, I think this is environmentally unfriendly. That it's not common, but they do go up sometime, and you're like, ooh, that's not. Yeah.
That's interesting. I'll have to, if I find a picture, I'll insert it.
Right. That, yeah, it's
trigger warning.
Trigger warning. No, and I mean that too, like we talked before about electric cars. And, you know, when a lithium battery goes up, again, we talk about carbon coming off, we talk about literal noxious fumes. This is not good.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, stuff like nuclear power is demonized. It's like, no, nuclear power, obviously there is an element of danger, but you can regulate it very well. You can get a lot of power off very little waste. And it's like, oh, yeah, this would be a very clean way going forward. No, nuclear power. It's like, it proves you're not serious.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's risks with everything. When I worked at the bank, I was within a certain distance of the nuclear power plant, and we had iodine tablets in our bank safe in case something happened. So, like, there's risks with everything. Right. But it's determining what part of the risk is worth it and what is not. And windmills that don't actually do anything, and then you have giant windmills you can't do anything with. Is it worth it?
Mhm.
Is it worth getting rid of our gas cars to replace them with electric cars when the gas ones are working just fine, and it would cost more resources to manufacture? Like I said it before, it's like the woman who decides that she needs to go green in her kitchen, and so instead of using up what she has or continuing to use her Rubbermaid stuff, she gets rid of it all and buys glass stuff. That's not really being a conservationist. Use it until it breaks and you can't use it, and then replace with other things.
Right. And it's like, why is it that all of this environmentalism just ends up in giving the government more money? Like,
Well,
it's like, because the government is obviously never wasteful, ever.
never. So, speaking of that, somewhat, Elon Musk, the UN told him that they needed $6 billion to end world hunger. And they said that if billionaires would give their money, that they could do it. And Elon Musk said that he would do it if they could show him where the money is going.
Right.
So what do you think's going to happen with that? I know that he's somewhat controversial. Not everybody likes him. And he's just like, dude, if you're worried about the climate, why are we just shooting rockets off into space whenever anybody feels like doing it?
Right.
But
no, it's very true. And also I saw that later in that thread. So that he's like, oh yeah, UN. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll open source it. He's like, ha. Your world hunger budget last year was over $8 billion, and you say you need 6 of mine. Why didn't you solve it with the 8 you had? And B, he pointed out that the UN police forces in Africa, it was sex trafficking for food. Kids saying, oh yeah, we'll give you some food, but yeah.
really,
And I mean, that's kind of been noised around for a while, but not not often mentioned by such public figures. That how that these excellent UN peacekeeping force, and you're like, no, you mean, again, child rapists, not good.
right? It's interesting. It's all
Yeah.
very interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
So Elon Musk can end world hunger according to the UN, but they won't tell him how or show him what can happen.
Yeah.
Isn't that sad?
Yeah. I mean, the UN is a useless, loaded institution anyways. It's like, oh yeah, what do you mean Trump wanted to leave the UN? And I'm like, please make my day. There's nothing like Iran on the Human Rights Council to really.
Yeah. No, there's some messed up stuff. So if you're tired of that, the best thing you can do is get some yarn from our fabulous sponsor, Chicken Lady Fiber Arts. Get some pretty yarn. Make something happy for yourselves, your loved ones. Get going on Christmas presents, because there's Biden has his way. We're not going to be able to have Christmas presents, so buy local.
Christmas is coming. The goose is getting fat.
So,
and Hanukkah is early this year too. It's end of November.
What is
Hanukkah?
Oh yes. So if you celebrate that, really get knitting, because you guys don't have a lot of time.
Right, you have less time to go.
You have less time than I do, so.
Right.
And I'm never ready, so.
That's true. I'm never ready either.
That's all right. It keeps it interesting.
That's right. Keeps it fun. But seriously, I mean, we've talked about a lot of bad things in the news this week. But there are wins, with governorship in Virginia, and the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, which we didn't mention, seems to be going well. And even through all of that, with us being politics and knitting, that there's always the close to home. If nothing else, you can sit down and knit yourself something nice.
Yep. Exactly. And look at this. I didn't even realize it, but look at how pretty speckled this yarn is. On the outside, there are a few speckles, but if you look inside, there are some fabulous things happening. So get yourself some cool yarn because it keeps life interesting.
There you go.
You know, when you're always looking to see what's the next stitch, make something fun.
And the code again is PIK deplorables 20 for 20% off your order.
Yep. So on that note, I don't think I have the bandwidth for anything else that's depressing. So make sure you follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Gab, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Vero, Telegram, Parler, MeWe. I think I got them all that time.
I think so.
And you know, we'll see you guys next week. Keep knitting.
All right, see you guys then.
All right, bye.
Bye.